Hi, I'm Lena. My sister hit me so hard the sound echoed off the kitchen tiles. Then she screamed, "Get out! You've always thought you were better than us." And the worst part? My parents didn't say a word. They just sat there like it was normal, like I deserved it. For 4 years, I'd been paying the mortgage on the house they lived in. I covered my dad's heart meds, sent money every month, even skipped my own dental work so they could keep their lights on. But when I finally paused the payments, just paused, they didn't ask if I was okay. They demanded answers. That night, everything changed. It was late September, the kind of evening where the sky blushes orange before slipping into navy blue. The sea breeze still carried summer's warmth, but fall was in the air, quiet and crisp. I parked my car outside the old cedar-sided house I'd helped them keep. The porch light was on, but no one came out to greet me. I used to feel comfort pulling up here. Now my stomach turned. I opened the door. "Hey, everyone," I called, forcing brightness into my voice. My sister Colleen was in the kitchen, laughing, loud, pointed, like she wanted me to hear how much fun she was having without me. Mom glanced up from her knitting. Tight smile, the one she gave when she was being polite, but disapproving. Dad didn't look up. Just kept fiddling with his glasses like they might make him invisible. Colleen didn't even say hi. She just said, "You made it," like she was surprised I showed up at all. Dinner was already on the table. Beef stew, Mom's go-to when she wanted to pretend everything was fine. I took my usual seat, the far end of the table by the back window. Same spot I'd sat in since I was a teenager. Only back then, I thought the silence meant peace. Now, I knew better. "Long drive?" Mom asked, her eyes still fixed on her plate. I nodded. "Yeah, roads were packed." Silence. Then Colleen piped up. "So how's life in your little condo on the hill? Must be nice not having to worry about real problems." My fork froze. I knew that tone, the one she used right before she tried to humiliate me. "I pay the mortgage on this house," I said quietly. "I do worry, just in different ways." She snorted. "Oh, here we go again. Saint Lena saving us all." I looked to my mom for backup. She just kept chewing. Dad cleared his throat but said nothing. That's when Colleen slammed her hand on the table. "You want a medal? You think throwing money at us makes you better?" I never said that. And then it happened. She stood, walked around the table, and slapped me. Right across the face. The room went dead still. My cheek burned, but what stung more was the silence. Not one word, no gasp, no reprimand, nothing. I looked at my mother. Her eyes were on the stew again. "Don't make this a bigger deal than it needs to be," she said softly. That was it. Something inside me snapped, quietly but completely. I stood up, slow. My chair scraped against the floor. "I'm not making a scene," I said. I grabbed my coat from the hook, my fingers brushing the little silver pendant I wore. It was a key. Mom gave it to me when I moved out. She said it meant I'd always have a place here. That night, it felt like a lie made of metal. I walked into the night air, wind biting at my cheeks, but it felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in that house. That was the last time I stepped into that home as their daughter. I thought that would be the end. I didn't know. They weren't done with me yet. 2 weeks. That's how long it had been since I walked out of my parents' house with my cheeks stinging and my heart in free fall. 14 days of silence on my part. No calls, no texts, no explanation. At first it felt like a relief, like someone had finally cracked open a window in a room I'd been suffocating in for years. I started sleeping better. I cooked for myself. I walked by the beach in the early mornings and reminded myself what peace sounded like. But then the messages started. The first came from Mom. "Lena, this isn't just about you. We need to talk." Simple. Neutral. But I could hear the ice beneath it. Then another, just a few hours later. "Your father and I are scared. Please call back." I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew where this was going. They weren't scared because they'd hurt me. They were scared because the money had stopped. By day 3, the tone changed. Colleen chimed in. Wow, can't believe you're ghosting your own family. Classy. Then Mom again. Your father's health isn't great. The bills are stacking up. You're our only hope right now. No apology. No, we're sorry for what happened. Just guilt, pressure, expectation. I sat at my tiny kitchen table, staring at the screen. A half-drunk cup of coffee had gone cold next to my hand. The overhead light flickered every now and then. I kept meaning to fix it. But right then, I was too busy trying to keep myself from drowning in shame I hadn't even earned. Day 5 brought a voicemail from Dad. He rarely called. I was so used to his silence that hearing his voice startled me. Lena, he said, I don't like getting involved in all the emotion, but this is your responsibility. We're your family. You make real money. We're counting on you. Real money. Like that was all I was. Like I didn't have rent, student loans, or a life of my own. I pressed my palm into my forehead, trying to rub away the pressure building behind my eyes. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank records, just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. Page after page of transfers stared back at me, rent-sized payments, sometimes bigger. I'd wired thousands over the past few years. Every time they said the mortgage was behind or the water bill was overdue or Dad's prescriptions weren't covered, I just sent it. No questions. Because I thought that's what good daughters did. But now, the doubt started crawling in. I opened another tab, pulled up the website of the bank holding the mortgage. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Did I even have access? Years ago, they added my name as a co-signer when Dad's credit tanked. I'd almost forgotten about that. I typed in my info, security questions, mother's maiden name, the street I grew up on, and then I was in. The numbers hit me like a slap of cold ocean water. 5 months delinquent. 5. I'd been sending money every single month, thousands, and they hadn't been using it on the mortgage. I scrolled through the statements, my pulse pounding louder with each line. Where the hell was the money going? Clothes, vacations, or more likely, Colleen's debts. I closed the laptop and stared at the dark screen. My reflection stared back, tired and thinner than I remembered. I called Dad. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was flat, like he knew what was coming. I just checked the mortgage account, I said. It's 5 months behind. A pause. Then, things have been tight. I swallowed. I sent you more than enough to cover it. Another pause. Longer this time. It's gone toward other things, he muttered. I clenched my jaw. Like what? Colleen's had a rough time, and we had repairs, groceries, medical... Stop, I said, my voice shaking. You let me believe I was helping keep a roof over your heads. I skipped medical bills of my own. And you, what? You gave it to Colleen? And then I heard Mom's voice in the background. She must have been on speaker. Don't act like we didn't raise you, she snapped. We sacrificed plenty for you. You wouldn't even have that job if it weren't for us. I laughed, bitter and cold. You mean the job I got because I worked 3 part-time gigs through college while living on canned soup? She didn't respond, just hung up. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark staring at the little silver key pendant still hanging from the hook near my door. Mom gave it to me years ago. Told me it meant I'd always have a place to come back to. Now it just felt like a lie I wore around my neck. The next day I met up with Mia, my oldest friend, and the one person who'd always called them out for how they treated me. We sat in a coffee shop near the marina. She looked over the bank statements I'd printed. This isn't just shady, she said. You've got legal standing here. You've been funding their life for years. You're not just helping. You're an investor. I blinked. I'd never thought of it that way. It's time to draw a line, she said. Seriously, stop payments, demand full documentation, and talk to a lawyer. Her words scared me, not because she was wrong, but because I knew that once I took that step, there was no going back. That night, I typed out a single message. I will no longer send any financial support until I receive a full written accounting of where my contributions have gone. 22 words. No apology, no qualifiers. I stared at it for a long time, then hit send. The silence after was heavier than the chaos before, and I knew this wasn't over. They wouldn't take it quietly, but I wasn't the same woman who'd let them treat her like a spare wallet with a heartbeat. I wasn't going to fix this. Not this time. I thought they'd be angry. I didn't expect them to declare war. It started with a message from Mom less than 12 hours after I hit send. "You've officially abandoned us. I don't have a daughter anymore." Just like that. No build-up. No pause for reflection. Like she'd just torn my name out of the family registry with a sharp fingernail. I stared at the screen, heart hammering, fingers numb. Not surprised, but stunned anyway. A few minutes later, Dad chimed in. Pathetic. That was it. Just one word, sharp as a blade. I remembered being 8 years old, crying after losing a spelling bee. That was the same word he used then. Back then, I believed it. Back then, I tried harder. This time, I let the message sit unread for hours before deleting it. I buried myself in work, meetings, spreadsheets, numbers that didn't talk back or shame me. But even in the safety of my office cubicle, I felt it. That familiar hum in my chest, the kind that told me something was building. Something was coming. And then it did. It was a gray Wednesday when I walked into the office kitchen for coffee and felt the shift. People smiled too politely. Conversations died when I walked by. My name was in the air. I could feel it. Sharp and whispered. I told myself I was being paranoid until I saw the text from Mia. Check Facebook now. I sat down at my desk, heart in my throat, and opened the link she sent. It was a screenshot. Colleen had made a post. Public. Tagged Mom, Dad, and me. It breaks my heart to say this, but our sister Lena has turned her back on our family in our time of need. After all the sacrifices our parents made for her, she's chosen money over love. Please pray for them as they face this heartbreaking betrayal. Attached was a photo, one from 5 years ago. Me at a family BBQ, holding a plate of ribs, smiling. The caption under the photo read, "This is what betrayal looks like." I felt my face go cold. The comments were worse. How could she do this to them? Some people forget where they come from. Wow, always knew she was selfish. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, old neighbors, even Mom's church friends, all weighing in. None of them knew a damn thing. By lunchtime, I'd gotten 2 awkward looks and 1 concerned email from HR, but I told myself it would blow over. People gossip, then forget, until my boss called me into her office. Her tone was calm, but clipped. "Lena, your mother contacted our department." I blinked. "She what?" "She sent an email," she said carefully, "claiming you've been funneling family money through your personal account. She implied there might be financial misconduct that could reflect poorly on the company." The floor dropped beneath me. That's not true," I stammered. "Not even close." She nodded. "I believe you, but HR is required to investigate. Keep your documents handy." I left the office in a daze. My body was in the elevator, walking across the parking lot, unlocking my car door. But my mind was still spinning. They weren't just mad. They were trying to destroy me, not metaphorically, literally. That night, I called Mia. "They brought it to my job," I said, voice trembling. "They're trying to ruin your name," she said flatly. "You need to hit back." "With what? I can't out-slander them. They've already poisoned everyone." "You don't need to fight dirty," she said. "You need to fight smart. Legal smart." I spent the next 2 hours drafting an email to Colleen, Mom, and Dad. Cold, precise. No emotion. Subject, cease and desist. If you continue to publicly defame me or interfere with my employment, I will pursue legal action. You are not entitled to share private financial information, nor are you allowed to harass me in public or professional spaces. All future communications must go through a legal representative. I hit send, and then I turned off my phone. For the first time in days, my apartment was quiet. But it wasn't peace. It was the silence right before a storm breaks wide open. The next morning, I went for a walk. I hadn't been outside in 3 days. The sky was moody, that deep coastal gray that comes before rain but doesn't quite commit to it. I stopped in front of a jewelry store on the corner. In the window, resting on a velvet stand, was a silver key pendant, almost identical to the one I'd worn for years, the one Mom gave me when I moved out, the one I'd stopped wearing the night Colleen slapped me. I stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "You can't lock me in your story anymore." I wasn't their daughter anymore, not in their eyes. But maybe, just maybe, that was a kind of freedom too. That afternoon, Mia called again. "There's more," she said. "What now?" "Colleen shared screenshots of your bank transfers. She's spinning it like you've been embezzling family money, telling people you took advantage of them." I froze. "She sent it to a private group chat. I got it from someone who's on your side." I couldn't breathe for a moment. They weren't just angry. They were trying to erase me. I left the apartment without a plan, just keys, wallet, jacket. Drove until the streets blurred and the sun dipped low behind the clouds. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like memory. I sat in the back, alone, staring at my reflection in the window, eyes hollow, face older than I remembered. For a moment, I believed them. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I really didn't deserve a family. Then Mia showed up. She slid into the booth across from me without saying a word. She looked me in the eye. "You're not crazy," she said, "and you're not wrong." I swallowed hard. "They've made sure everyone sees me as the villain," she nodded, "because they know they've lost control." We sat there for a while. 2 women, 1 truth. "They used to say the key meant I'd always belong," I whispered. "Now it feels like it was just a chain." "Then break the chain," she said, "and start over." I didn't answer, but for the first time I believed it might be possible. The next morning I woke up with a plan, not just a feeling, not just a vague idea of standing up for myself. An actual plan. It started with 1 sentence I kept repeating to myself as I poured coffee. If they want to treat me like a bank, then I'll start acting like a lender. I called my bank first. I asked for every transaction I'd made over the past 3 years related to my parents' mortgage. The woman on the line was polite, efficient. She sounded like she'd handled messier family drama than mine. "You've sent more than enough to cover the mortgage twice over," she confirmed. "Can you verify that the account is under my name?" "Yes," she said. "You're still listed as a co-signer." I sat in silence for a beat. "So, legally, I'm responsible for the loan?" "Yes. In fact, based on your payment history, you could qualify to assume the loan entirely." Assume the loan. The words echoed in my head like church bells. That afternoon, I met with Mia again. We brought everything. Receipts, transfer statements, printed emails, even screenshots from Facebook. She introduced me to Rachel, a real estate attorney she trusted. Rachel was in her mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, and a voice like she didn't waste time on excuses. "I've seen this before," she said, flipping through the stack of papers. "Not uncommon, sadly." "You're saying I might have a case?" She looked up at me. "Lena, you don't just have a case. You have standing. They've taken your money. You've carried the mortgage. You're on the paperwork. Emotionally, they may have pushed you out. But legally, you're very much still inside." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, not relief, just oxygen. We spent the next hour mapping out options. Step 1. Officially request a full accounting of the mortgage from the lender. Step 2. File to assume the loan. Step 3. Deliver legal notice of property interest to my parents. Rachel leaned back and looked at me. This could get ugly. They'll fight you. I know, I said, but I'm done being their safety net. This time, I build something for me. Back at home, I stood in front of my nightstand. Inside the drawer was the silver key pendant. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I picked it up, held it in my palm. It used to feel like home. Now it felt like leverage. I tucked it into a small velvet pouch. Not to wear, just to keep. As proof, as memory, as closure I hadn't earned, but would take anyway. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and emotional landmines. Rachel filed the assumption documents. The bank confirmed the delinquency and that no new payments had come from my parents in nearly half a year. And on Thursday morning, I received the final confirmation. I now held full financial responsibility and legal control over the house. I sat at my kitchen table, the documents in front of me. My hands didn't shake this time, because I wasn't just the daughter they discarded. I was the person holding the deed. That night, I made the call. Mom picked up on the third ring. Her voice was clipped, like she was already annoyed. Finally decided to call back? I want a meeting, I said. At the house. You, Dad, Colleen. Tonight. Her laugh was short. What, you think you can just walk in and... You'll want to hear what I have to say. A pause. Then, fine, Yadi-O-Twos. I drove up the familiar winding road as the sun slipped behind the horizon. That old cedar-sided house was silhouetted against the gray sky. Same chipped shutters, same porch swing. But something had shifted. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place where something needed to end. They were all there when I walked in. Mom in her recliner, stiff. Dad leaning against the doorframe. Colleen on the couch, arms crossed, smirking like she already had her rebuttals ready. I didn't sit. I walked to the coffee table, pulled a thick envelope from my bag, and dropped it onto the wood with a solid thud. Colleen flinched. These, I said, are every payment I've made toward this house for the past 3 years. Mom opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. Don't interrupt. I pulled out another envelope. And this is the legal documentation confirming I've assumed full responsibility for the mortgage. Colleen scoffed. You think that means you can just take... I don't think, I said. I know, and legally I now own this property. So here's what's going to happen. I paused. Let the silence wrap around them like fog. You have 30 days to vacate. Mom stood up. You ungrateful little... I gave everything, I cut in. Money, time, my 20s. And you treated me like a resource, not a daughter. Dad slammed his palm against the wall. This is our home. No, I said, voice calm now. It's my investment. One you used like a bottomless well. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silver key pendant. They all froze. It still meant something to them. But I wasn't done. I used to wear this because I believed it meant I belonged, that I had a place here. I looped it around my neck, not as surrender, but as a statement. This key doesn't represent you anymore. It represents freedom. Mine. I turned to leave. Colleen shouted something behind me, but I didn't hear it. All I heard was the sound of the door closing behind me. Outside, the air smelled like rain. I stood there for a minute, letting the weight of it all press against my chest. And then it lifted. Slightly, but noticeably, because for the first time, I wasn't leaving in shame. I was walking away in power. 3 days. That's how long it took for them to strike back. It started small. A post on Colleen's Instagram, a picture of the house, my house, with the caption, "Some people inherit love, others inherit paperwork, vague, petty," but the comments told a louder story. So sorry you're going through this. Stay strong, karma will come around. Sounds like someone let money go to their head. I didn't respond, but my chest felt tight, not from the words, but from the realization that people were choosing sides, and not mine. By the end of the week, my inbox started filling up. Old friends, extended relatives, messages with that same syrupy tone. Just checking in. Heard there's been some tension. Your mom seems heartbroken. Is there a chance to talk things through? Families fight, Lena. Don't let pride get in the way of forgiveness. Pride? Is that what they thought this was? Not boundaries, not survival, not years of emotional and financial manipulation, just pride. And then the email came. It was from the community center where I volunteered once a month, reading to seniors on Tuesday afternoons. A short, clipped message. Subject: Concerns raised. Lena, we've received feedback from a few community members regarding your conduct and family dispute. Out of respect for the center's environment, we'll be placing your volunteer role on hold for now. Thank you for understanding. I sat in my car, in the grocery store parking lot, phone in hand, eyes burning. They hadn't just come for my job. They came for my reputation, my name. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and let the tears come. Not dramatic sobs, just silent, exhausted surrender. There's a special kind of grief that comes from realizing your family is no longer a safe place, and maybe never was. That night, Mia showed up unannounced with soup, red wine, and a copy of Boundaries by Dr. Cloud. I laughed through the tears. You really think a book's gonna fix this? I asked, wiping my nose on my sleeve. No, she said, handing me the soup, but it might help remind you you're not the crazy one here. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, sipping wine from chipped mugs. Mia looked at me and said, You know this isn't just about the house, right? I nodded. They lost control of you. That's what this is about. I swallowed hard. But what if I've lost control too? You haven't, she said. You made a boundary. They panicked. Now they're flailing. I looked down at my hands. They're still my parents. No, she said gently. They're people who raised you. That doesn't make them entitled to you forever. The next morning, I went back to the bank and asked for one last statement. Proof of the full mortgage balance and payment history in my name. The clerk raised an eyebrow. You're the first person I've seen smile while asking for a mortgage statement. I shrugged. It's a weird victory. But it was. Holding that paper felt like holding a deed to my own life. Later that week, I packed a small box and drove back to the house. Not to fight, just to prepare. 30 days was ticking fast, and I needed to know if they planned to comply or cause trouble. When I arrived, the front door was open. Music was playing. Loud, defiant country music. I knocked anyway. Colleen appeared in the doorway. She didn't smile. What do you want? I'm here to document the condition of the property, I said, and leave this. I handed her a printed notice. Formal, notarized, clear. She took it without reading. Mom was sitting in the living room flipping through an old photo album. She didn't look up. Still trying to play landlord? Colleen muttered. I ignored her. Instead, I walked into my old bedroom. It was empty. Just 4 walls and a worn carpet. But on the window ledge, someone had placed a photo. It was of me. Age 9, holding a softball trophy, beaming. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, our little winner. My throat tightened. I slipped the photo into my bag quietly, not because I wanted to remember them, but because I wanted to remember that even then, I was fighting to be seen. I drove away in silence. But as the house disappeared in my rearview mirror, so did something else. The belief that I owed them more than they gave, that I was only as good as my last deposit, that their version of me, ungrateful, selfish, cold, was the only truth. The next day, I started writing again, nothing big, just a journal entry. But the words came fast. Today I chose myself, not out of pride, but out of peace. Today I remembered I am not here to carry guilt that doesn't belong to me. A week later, I received a call from Rachel, my lawyer. They're pushing back, she said. Colleen's trying to dispute your legal control. She claims emotional coercion, says you manipulated them into signing over financial responsibility. I sighed. Of course she does. But don't worry, Rachel added. We're solid. You have proof. Let them scream. I stared out the window where a seagull floated effortlessly in the wind. Let them scream, I repeated. For once it didn't shake me. The 30-day notice came and went. No moving trucks, no boxes, no sign of change. The house stood still, like time had frozen around it. But I hadn't. I'd spent the last few weeks packing my own life back together, little by little. A new morning routine, long walks before work, unsubscribing from newsletters I'd never read, blocking numbers that only brought anxiety, deleting photos that once meant family but now just reopened wounds. Some nights, I still cried. It came in waves, grief, guilt, anger, but I didn't resist it anymore. I let it move through me because I finally understood healing isn't neat. It's not linear. It's not silent. It's messy, loud, sometimes ugly, but it's mine. One Saturday morning, I went to the local bookstore, the one with creaky floors and mismatched chairs. There was a sign taped to the door, Writing Workshop, for those starting over. My feet moved before my brain did. 10 minutes later, I was in the back room, surrounded by strangers with notebooks and nervous smiles. The instructor was a woman in her 60s, soft-spoken but steady. She said, "You don't need to be healed to write. You just need to be honest." That one sentence unlocked something in me. That afternoon, I wrote, "Sometimes the people who raise you never really see you. They only see what they expect you to be. And the day you step outside that role, they call it betrayal." It was the truest thing I'd ever put to paper. Meanwhile, the silence from the house didn't last. A letter came, mailed the old-fashioned way. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Colleen's, all sharp edges and dramatic loops. I stood in my kitchen, envelope in hand, debating whether to open it. Then I did. "You win, the house is yours, but don't expect us to make it easy. If we go down, we're taking your name with us." Underneath the note was a photo. Me, age 19, in a borrowed dress, holding a drink at a college party. It wasn't incriminating, but in their hands, they'd twisted. Like they twisted everything. Control. Again. Only this time, it didn't work. I didn't panic, I didn't call Mia, didn't email Rachel, I just stood there. Calm. Because I knew something now. They could no longer shame me with who I used to be. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't wait for them to leave the house. I would take it back, not with force, but with finality. I wrote one last certified letter, stating my intention to begin legal eviction proceedings if the property was not vacated within 10 days. Then I drove to the edge of the cliffs, parked, and watched the waves crash below. There was something comforting in their rhythm, unapologetic, unstoppable, like who I was becoming. The next day, Mia dropped by with 2 iced coffees and a grin. "You look different," she said, handing me the drink. "Do I?" "Yeah, less like a survivor, more like a woman who's rebuilding." I smiled, but it faded when I told her about Colleen's letter. She listened, jaw tight, eyes sharp. "Do you want to go public?" she asked. "Tell your side?" I thought about it. For a second, I wanted to reclaim my name, my truth, my story. But then I shook my head. "No," I said, "I don't need a public victory. I just need peace." That night, I walked through my apartment, touching things gently. The framed photo of me and Mia at the beach, the chipped mug from my first solo trip, the little dish that held my keys. Not to their house, but to my life. And then I found the velvet pouch again. The silver key pendant. I took it out, turned it in the light. It used to represent everything I wanted. Belonging, approval, love. Now, it was just metal. I walked to the fireplace, opened the screen, and placed it on the coals. Watched it dull, then darken. Not burn, but transform. The way I had. 2 days later, I received a short email from Rachel. Colleen's lawyer called. They're moving out. No countersuit, no statement, just silence. I didn't cheer, didn't dance. Just closed my laptop, leaned back, and exhaled. Because some victories don't come with applause. They come with quiet. On the 31st day, I drove up the hill again. The house was empty. Porch light off, windows bare. Just me and the echo of everything that once was. I stepped inside slowly. It was cleaner than I expected, but sterile, like a hotel room no one wanted to claim. In the living room, they'd left behind one thing, a cardboard box. Inside, a few family photos, an old sweater, a note from my mother. You chose money over blood. We'll never understand that. I stared at the words for a long time, then whispered, no. I chose myself. I didn't cry, didn't rage, just walked through the empty rooms one last time. And when I stepped outside, I locked the door behind me, not because I was shutting them out, but because I was finally letting myself in. I didn't move into the house right away, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to make sure the version of me walking through that front door was different from the one who used to knock on it begging to be seen. So I waited. 2 weeks, long enough to breathe, long enough to repaint the old parts of myself I'd let them chip away. I finally moved in on a quiet Sunday. No fanfare, no truck full of memories. Just a small car, a few boxes, and Mia with 2 cups of coffee and a pack of lemon muffins. We stood in the empty living room for a moment, staring at the bare walls. So, she said, how does it feel? I smiled. Strange. Good strange or bad strange? Neither, I said. Just real, mine. The first thing I brought in wasn't furniture. It was a stack of books. Not just any books, ones that had stayed with me through every version of my life. Poetry, memoirs, one battered cookbook from college with coffee stains on half the pages. I lined them on the built-in shelf by the fireplace. A declaration. This house wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a blank page. Little by little, I filled the space. Not with expensive things, but with meaning. A thrifted lamp that gave off warm light. A secondhand record player. Photos. But not of my childhood. Not of my parents. Photos of hikes. Of cities I'd visited. Of people who'd shown up and stayed. One afternoon, I hosted a writing group in the dining room. 6 women, all over 40. Some widowed, some divorced, one recently sober. We read, we cried, we laughed until someone spit tea out their nose. We called it the rewrite, because that's what we were all doing, rewriting who we thought we had to be. The holidays came. There were no calls from Mom, no cards, no updates.